I don't want to focus on products and details because that's not solving problems. And that's not why consumers buy homes. They don't buy them for details. They buy it because it's going to solve a challenge or a need that they have. And that's an emotional one.
All right, folks, we are back here today with an interview for the group. You're going to like this one. It's a really interesting one. I ran into Jason online talking about lead generation online, how to convert leads. And, he was dropping some knowledge bombs left and right. And I love identifying people that kind of know what they're talking about. So I decided to invite him here in the group. He's from the mortgage space, ran a team that did something like 1,300 deals, which is pretty wild. Don't take my word for it. Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into the real estate space, the mortgage space, and what is it you do? Go for it.
Well, hey, well, thanks for having me. When it comes down to like my story, just like everyone, no one really kind of plans on being in this industry. But with myself, it actually is a little different because I was actually born into the industry. My family owned a mortgage company. So 3 days after I was born, I was on my mom's desk in in the mortgage company. And
Nice.
so I grew up around loan officers and real estate agents. The mortgage company, we had, 5 different channels of business. And at that time that, real estate and mortgage being together wasn't uncommon. So grew up with real estate agents, grew up within the industry, but I'm an engineer by trade. That's my background. I joined our family's company in '09. After working, I used to work for Peter Thiel, which some of you may know, founder of PayPal.
Yeah,
And,
I've heard of
and
Peter.
so
Holy cow.
yeah, so I came up in the venture capital technology space in San Francisco Bay Area, where I'm born and raised. I live in Georgia now, and I took a sabbatical. Just was kind of burnt out, didn't really need the work, but I just that lasted about 2 weeks before I got bored out of my mind, and I
Awesome.
decided to join the family business, and through that. I've been a chief strategy officer, chief growth officer, chief marketing officer. I've been a consultant, a coach. That's what I do now is consulting and coaching. I've been an executive. So I've held a lot of different positions over the last 15 years in the mortgage industry and working with some of the biggest firms and top loan officers, top agents, top lenders. And I love the space. I love the industry. And it's funny. I just, obviously with the NAR thing going around, I just actually just got off another call I'm doing a big webinar on that tomorrow. So I
Cool.
just got off a call prepping for that. So yeah, it's just like this industry's never boring. So I'm excited to do do what I can to serve and help the professionals do what, be the best versions of themselves.
I love it. I love it. I didn't know we had that in common. I was a software guy, in another life, working up for Microsoft up in the Seattle area, not in the
Oh,
Bay
okay.
Area, but in Seattle. The little sister tech hub, in the Pacific Northwest. That's awesome. Didn't know that. Yeah, I jumped into real estate, never looked back because it was a lot more fun, quite frankly,
Yeah. Yeah.
from the software world to just talking to people, doing marketing, doing sales. So it's been a happy transition for me. That was like 10 years ago now, so it was a
Yeah.
while ago. So but getting into this, this topic today, the science of lead generation. What do
Mhm.
you mean by that? Because you and I, we're like from a science background. We
Yeah.
work like technology, ones and zeros, and I get that, the science of that. But you're talking about the science of lead generation. What do you mean by that term?
Well, generally when it comes to lead generation, one is that it is a science, right? It's hard. Lead generation is not when we're talking about at scale, right? If you're doing like true consumer direct lead generation, buying leads, doing organic lead generation, it's a little different, obviously. Running ads, that type of stuff. There's a lot of variables on what makes success. However, when I look at posts in Facebook groups and people talking about it, and more so just asking for advice or, hey, I'm going to buy some leads. When can I, like the question, the most common one is, hey, I'm looking at buying. Well, let me take a step back. First is like, what are the cheapest and easiest leads, which just doesn't exist, right?
Of
And
course.
then two, the other one is like, like when can I, if I did this, when can I expect these to close? Is it going to be like 30 days, 60 days? And, so there's just a really massive, just a not understanding what it takes to be successful at lead generation, or just thinking that I'm going to do this and I'm going to convert at a high percent. And it just does not exist. And there's a lot of variables that go into, to being successful. And, I've had a lot of success doing lead generation. And I think it's just because I tend to do things a little differently. But, ultimately, it comes down when I talk about a science is, look, it's the messaging, it's the creative, it's your workflow after the lead comes in, it's your messaging, it's the response time, and everything needs to be tweaked. Everything's a formula and a framework, and everything needs to be tweaked and improved and optimized. It's not just I try this one thing and I set it and forget it, and then things just start happening. There's so many different ways that lead generation can go well or go horribly wrong, depending on how you're looking at it. And also understanding that if you're a professional, whether you're a real estate agent or a loan officer that is doing lead generation, you got to understand the conversations that you have with leads are a lot different than the ones you have. That's like a direct referral from your sphere, friend, family, whatever, or organic leads, right? Like, it's about understanding like the difference between cold traffic and warm traffic, the colors of buttons, right? And the way that you change words around, the way that I've been successful, is because I didn't focus on what a lot of people focus on when it comes to lead generation. A lot of people focus on a product, right? Or a service. They don't, I focused on why consumers say yes and why they say no. I focused on what they call behavioral economics, right? And that's why and how consumers make the decisions that they do. Again, I'm an engineer by trade, so I think about the science of things and the formulas and how things fit together, putting puzzles together. And so I'm a little bit of a geek, admittedly. And so I took that into lead generation, and it's worked out well. And I think as a real estate agent, though, you have a little bit of an upper hand, because at the end of the day, that's what consumers want. And someone that coaches loan officers every day, I said,
Mhm.
look, guys, you got to understand, nobody wants a mortgage. Nobody ever in the
Right.
history of anything has ever woken
It's
up
a
saying, I can't.
necessary evil.
Yeah, they need it, right? By and large, financing takes place, right? For most transactions, they need it, but it's not a want. No one says, I can't wait to, like, give you my assets. I can't wait to, give you my tax returns, or, and give you my W-2s and give you a bunch. No one's excited about that. They want the home. Right. So as for doing predominantly lead generation on the mortgage side, is I don't want to focus on products and details, because that's not solving problems. And that's not why consumers buy homes. They don't buy them for details. They buy it because it's going to solve a challenge or a need that they have. And that's an emotional one, right? It's, what do we call it? The 4 Ds, right? The diapers, death, divorce, and, so I always forget there's another one of them, but like there's a
Diplomas,
diploma, right? Like,
deployment, which is, yeah, there's a few. There's a
yeah,
few.
there's just, it's all the D's, right? Like, and that's what makes them move. It's, or downsizing, upsizing, job relocation, being closer to the grandkids, right? Moving to warmer climates or colder whatever it happens to be. It's all personal stuff. It has nothing to do with business. I mean, unless you're an investor, obviously, but it has, by and large, has nothing to do with business or getting a good deal or anything. It's like the consumers have already told themselves a story that I want to live in this community. I want this type of house, because they've already sold the lifestyle that they believe they're going to have by doing that. So that's
Got it.
what I lean into. I don't lean into, hey, you get first time home buyers 3.5 percent down and blah 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 and all that other stuff. That's just product pushing. Anyone could do that, and it's a commodity. So so anyway, so that's when I talk about the science of it, because you got to figure out how to put all of these things together, the colors, the messaging, the way things are formatted, all of that, to find the right fit that's going to create what you want, which is a conversation, because that's how agents and loan officers make their money, is by having conversations about housing and real estate. And as a marketer, that is my job. I need to create conversations. After that, that's on you guys, right? You guys got to close, you guys got to sell, but ultimately, as a marketer, I got to drive the right traffic to you to create conversations.
Yeah, 100%. And and you said there's a lot of things I want to drill into. You said a lot of really great things. There are a lot of really good points. Let's start with this. So, you work primarily in the mortgage space.
Mhm.
One of the when I think about lead generation for the mortgage space, it's usually networking with agents. Seems to be like a lot.
Yep.
That's the plan for a lot of loan officers. But you didn't mention that. You're saying, hey, you're talking about direct to consumer strategies,
Mhm.
getting in front of the buyers, not the
Yep.
agents, the buyers. Why do you think the loan industry is so focused on, at least the ones that I know, they're really focused on networking with agents? But you're talking about a completely different strategy, which is going direct to consumer. How do you encounter that? You get people off of the agent network because they're just relying on the referrals. How do you get them to change that mindset and go direct to consumer, which is the ideal situation, right?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because loan officers, by and large, will do agent, and I'm a proponent of. To me, it's like, look, get business however you want to get business. Like the more channels, the merrier. But what I say to loan officers, I said, the most dangerous number in a business is one. So if you only have one way of getting business, that's going to be a problem. And we're seeing that right now with this whole NAR thing and whatnot. And if most of your business is from buyer agents, right, then and they're freaking
Vulnerable.
out. And look, we don't know how this is going to shape out, so it could be a much to do about nothing. But ultimately, something is going to change, and whatever it is, it's going to change the dynamic a bit. And so why would you want to have all your eggs in one basket? And also, because most transactions um need real estate financing, and that's going to be the biggest reason why a loan or why a transaction happens or does not happen. Loan officers really should be in the first position, right? And it's not anything against agents, and honestly, the agents I talk to are be like, I would love to have not everyone in the world coming to me for business, because that's kind of what an agent's life is, right? That's home warrant. Anyone that gets any type of business from a transaction ancillary, they go to real estate agents, right? And like real estate agents have told me time and time again, because I've been on the real estate side, I've coached, I've spoken at events and whatnot, and they've told me time and time again that they would love to be the ones on the receiving end of referrals. They would love to be able, to have that's great, right? They would love to avoid getting the onslaught of calls every Tuesday morning from 9 a.m. to 11 whatever it is that
Yeah.
I don't ever coach out my loan officers, but others do, right? So I think, going to the direct to consumer is important, right? I think networking with, agents is important too, but ultimately, putting yourself in the first position is a powerful thing to do for your business for long term success, and why don't you be the value, instead of the agent, right? Why don't you give
100%.
the leads out to the agents as opposed to them always having to look at you, and look, you're not going to be the only lender that they're talking to or working with. So,
Yeah.
it's just, and look, it's not easy because loan officers, look, it's the least path of resistance, right? For a loan officer, right? Because the agent's doing all the work, right? The agent's out there marketing the properties, like they have the gold. So, like, hey, why not just go where the gold is instead of me having to do all the work to try to get the consumer? And again, because what we're doing in the mortgage industry isn't the sexy thing or the thing that's even wanted. So there's a lot of reasons for it. However, I'm always a big proponent of going to direct to consumer, and whether it's paid or organic. I'm big on hyperlocal. I'm big on organic marketing. I really coach on that, on how it is a long-term play. And, in our business, everyone's all about that instant gratification, instant ROI, leads that close in 30 days, that type of stuff. But ultimately, I'm in for the long-term game. And so that's what I coach, because I want them to build a sustainable business that is not disrupted by market conditions. And those that I coach that do what I do, their businesses are better for it.
Gotcha. I love that, and and that's great. And let's I want to tell you a personal story. The lender that I had the best relationship with, the way they started that relationship was, "Hey Gus, I see you're awesome. I've got a ready to go buyer that I'd love for you to help because I see
Yeah.
you're on it and you're a go getter and you're amazing." Very different than other lenders that have reached out to me. Those Tuesday morning calls. And we all get them, right? That's just part of the business. People want to
Yeah.
network, they want to take you out for a drink, cup of coffee, build that, invite you to a class, and that's good. That's awesome stuff. But that one call, that one interaction changed everything for me. Like, wait, hold
Yeah.
on, what? You can
Yeah.
add value to me? What is this, right? This is not just me being, picking the one I like the best, right? Who,
Hmm.
who who just seems the better person. That just turned the tables completely, right? And that started a relationship that was very reciprocal. It was a win-win, but they started with value, and that for
Yep.
me it was like that was amazing. But let's say Jason, you've convinced me. Okay, great. I want to be number one. I want to be first position. How do you tell people to do that? Because that it takes a mindset shift. You don't just want to rely on the agents to get the business.
Hmm.
Understood? I'm bought in. What's next? How do I do that? How do I get myself from prospecting agents and being nice to agents to attracting these consumers?
Yeah, so look, it's all about changing your marketing strategy, right? So if all you are is going after agents and networking and doing what you can, and maybe you are adding, value in that stuff, and just continue to do that. But if I'm saying, look, it's time to focus on direct to consumer, like there's a lot of different ways you go. But as far as like, I always start from this, and this is what I've been getting a lot the last 2 years with market contraction and people having a little bit of a rough time in the market is that, the question I get most is like, hey, if you were a loan officer, what would you be doing right now? Right. And so, and it's easy. It's like, hey, if I was a loan officer right now and I had to build my business in this market and building a long sustainable business, I would be focused on hyper local marketing, right? And I would be doing blogging and I would be doing YouTube, right? I would be doing all the other social media for as micro content to feed to my macro content, which would be the YouTube and blog. But I'm playing the long game, right? I'm showing what people actually care about, right? When they're searching on YouTube, yes, they're going to look for they're going to want, try to educate themselves on mortgage products and stuff. And I would have that too. However, and I know of someone that's bought and sold homes myself, or people moved to different states or different locations. Is that what are people looking for? They're looking at YouTube for museums, parks, neighborhoods, stores, shops, restaurants, the state in general, state fairs. Like they want to know what it's going to be like living in that area. So knowing that that's where the attention is, and as a marketer, that's all I care about is where the attention is. Knowing that's where it is, then I'm going to be the one doing that. And none of this stuff is theory, by the way. I'm a practitioner on this, and so everything I talk about, I'll let you know if it's something that it's like, hey, this is what I've heard from other people, so I could share that. But ultimately, if I'm going to give you an answer on something, it's going to be something because I'm a practitioner on it, and doing what I'm talking about absolutely has helped business, has created deals for me, loans, all of that stuff. And like you mentioned, our team of consumer direct was all built off of this type of stuff, including like paid ads and whatnot. But ultimately, what it comes down to is I want the eyeballs, I want the attention, I want to be known as the person that's being that connector, that market connector in that area. So if I'm a loan officer, not only that, but I'm going to know who to recommend as a dentist, as an orthodontist, as a pediatrician, as a chiropractor, as basically how does a human being hey, this is the best place for for gas. In Georgia here, boiled peanuts are a thing, right? Like, so like I would probably do a video on boiled peanuts on like the best place to get that, barbecue, whatever. And the loan officers that I've coached, they've done this. They've gone in and they've done interviews with restaurants and connected with like shop owners and stuff like that. Not only do these videos get a lot of views because it's just like the Food Network or anything else that people look at, or like House Hunters and all that other good stuff, is that not only they get the views, but now they're actually connecting with it. And a lot of small business owners don't know how to market, right? They don't know how to do Facebook or videos or anything. So you're actually helping them do that. And guys, like I've created some crazy relationships to where I could go into restaurants and get preferred seating and stuff like that just because I put someone on a video right at one time.
Love
And
it.
loan officers are starting to see this too. And it's not that I'm asking for that or I'm excited about it. I mean, it's a good perk, but ultimately it's the fact that I added value. I did something that
Yeah.
other people are not. So my marketing was all about interrupting the pattern. For those that, in this group may have seen my content, may have seen me, may have not, but my mantra is different first, better second. I'm a contrarian, right? I'm the only contrarian CMO in the mortgage space. I still stand by that. And so I'm going to do things differently, but it works because again, I only care about where the consumer attention is and what they care about. And if I'm there, naturally, I'm gonna. Oh well, and because look, if they're looking at a location or a place, and the conversation of mortgage or real estate comes up, I want to be the person that they think about. Right. So I want to
Yeah.
be that connector. I want to be able to do that. And then through those people that I connect with that I'm referring business to, chiropractors, lawyers, whoever it happens to be, like I want that as well as referral business, because referral prospecting is a channel that a lot of people don't even focus on with their clients and whatnot. And so I want that be an active channel. I want to create a pipeline that really is never ending and is immune to market conditions simply because I know as many people as I can. I've created relationships with as many people as I can, and all of that, and they have seen value in those relationships. So that's how you start it. Now, the granular details of what you do, like creating a journey, customer journey, creating your marketing strategy on what that looks like, your branding, all of that stuff goes into play. And obviously, you would start a strategy from a foundational level and build upon that. But ultimately, that's the objective, right? I want to be the person that's known, from a Gary Vaynerchuk perspective of like, I want to be the digital mayor, right? It goes along those veins, right? Be involved in your community, be the one that talks about where the pumpkin patches are, right? Where to buy Thanksgiving Day, turkeys or smoked turkeys or anything else that is how they live their lives, because that's what's going to be interesting to them, right? Here's an example. If you're an agent or a loan officer and I help you, right? Let's say I help you do whatever on either side of the transaction. If I'm going to continue for you to be relevant to you, am I going to be relevant if all I talk about is rates or products or market conditions? If you just, bought or sold, you're not going to care about any of that. Right now, maybe I did a great impression on you and I created a good relationship. So that's enough. But at some point, you're going to stop reading the emails, right? You're going to stop
It's not
responding to
relevant.
calls because it's not relevant to you. But if it's about where you live and things that you like, that is always going to be relevant. And there is
100%.
zero risk and zero, just zero any negative anything by being relevant, right? By having
Yeah.
that attention and that awareness. It never goes out of style. So that's the type of business I'm building. And guys, look, it's different. But ultimately, everything that I'm saying, it's easier on the real estate. And honestly, agents, you're doing this already, but you just don't really know that you're doing this. Or at least you're not really like hyper focused on like making this an actual like channel of business. But this is what everyone else does, right? It's as they focus on what actually matters and being relevant as opposed to what you do as a loan officer or a real estate agent. If you're a connector, right, and you do this the right way, like your business really, not only is it going to grow, but it's going to sustain in the peaks and valleys that we have in our market.
Yeah, 100%. And I love it, Jason. So if you were doing it right now, you would do that hyper local content, whether that's written form, whether that's a video form. Don't just do products and features, because especially in a mortgage, it can be a little dry. And like you said, it's only going to be relevant when the time is right for any one
Yep.
consumer. But what content is relevant is evergreen. What content is like mass appeal, and I love that on the organic side, because that's how I actually, for Power I say it's how I generate most of our business, on the organic end. I through it through content, through education. I rarely put out videos about like scripting and ISAs. I mean, that's what we do, but that's not that interesting, right? I mean, just
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I wouldn't have gotten 6,000 people in this Facebook group talking about how awesome ISAs are. It's about real estate marketing. That's
Yep.
much more appealing
Yep.
to it. So I'm a believer. I practice that. How does someone, so what is there a progression to these strategies? Because, for example, paid ads and organic, in my experience, a very different game. It's a very
Yep.
different game. And that paid advertising, you're not talking about the best restaurant, or you're not, at least that's how I understand it. You're not. It's a little bit of a different perspective, a little bit of a different hook. It's a different way to get people's attention. Is that a progression? You start with your organic, you start with hyperlocal, then build up to the ads. And how does the strategy change when you're doing paid content?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And really what it is, the progression is from organic to paid. So basically is like I'm creating a brand, I'm doing everything I just talked about locally, right? Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Reels, TikTok, whatever. I'm doing all of that stuff on the social, and I'm doing organic because that's kind of that know you like you piece of it, right? Because without those two, you don't get to the trust, and trust is where the money is. But it's a progression from there into paid, because paid is more of an offer, right? Of some kind. It doesn't necessarily need to be a product or a service right off the bat. Cause again, that's like asking someone to get married on the first date, right? Ultimately it's a value. So here's an example of how I would do a paid ad that's based off of the strategy that I was mentioned. Right. So what I would do is I would probably like, and I actually did this. So this again, as a practitioner. So what I did is I built a free guide that's it's a lead magnet, right? I'm sure you guys have talked about lead magnets in this group before. I'm big on lead magnets, and the reason why is because they work, right? So it'd be like so like Dallas Fort Worth, that'd be like the hidden gems of Dallas, the 5 hidden gems of Dallas Fort Worth, right? And maybe it's a guide, it goes to a blog post or whatever. Now, obviously, I got my branding on there. I have some subtle calls to action that I'm an agent or a loan officer, or whatever it happens to be. But the value is, it's like, oh man, like this is going to be this is going to be something that people are going to be interested in, because again, all I care about is the attention. I want eyeballs on my brand and my branding. I don't care how I get it, but I want it. And so I would be doing league mags, top 10 barbecue restaurants, top 10, blah, 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 top 10, whatever, right? I would be doing maybe ads based off of the top, businesses on Instagram in Atlanta, right? There's just a lot of different things that I would do from
Oh,
a hyper.
so you would do hyper local, and you would pick some of that content to put ads behind, so people are attracted by some of that hyper local content.
Correct, correct. And then if I'm going for like direct, if more of an offer on the real estate side, an ad that I'll share that still works today, but was one that I call it the $100 million ad formula, because companies in the heyday were spending about $100 million a month on this ad
Wow.
strategy.
Hmm.
Right now, as an agent, right, and I'm guessing you mostly have agents in this in the group,
Majority agents
right?
for sure.
So right now, and you guys have probably seen this ad before, and you may heard it. I don't see it as much, but right now, depending on what your market, if you put out an ad or even an organic post to say get a list of houses under, let's say, 450,000, get a list of houses, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, under $400,000 that are available today, right? You will get people to click on that ad and download that list, and you'll get their information. I guarantee it, right? People will
Yeah.
do that. And I've also coached loan officers. Hey, partner with agents and do this, and then help them work the leads that you get from these things, right? And so ultimately, it comes down to what are people going to look at, right? What are people going to care about? And so to me, the paid is a supplement to what I'm doing organically, because it gives me extra, because I'm paying for it, right? Organically, I'm not really paying for it, right? Maybe I'm boosting, maybe I'm doing some other stuff that's just kind of generally getting some more eyeballs. But ultimately, there's no paid advertising strategy behind that. But I want to supplement. So let's say I'm doing okay organically. Well, then I'm gonna put some money behind it, because I want to add some more opportunities to create conversations. So I'm doing somewhat of the hyper local. I'm doing some direct ads. Maybe it's a lead magnet, like how to buy your first home with high mortgage rates, right? Maybe it's a guide about that, right? Maybe again, big on lead magnets, big on guides, 2-1 buy down, what does that mean? And how do you take advantage of it? All right. One thing that I've run is like, things when there's a DPA program, it's like, like home buyers, how would you like, would an extra $10,000 help you right now? Right? Question mark.
You would.
Yeah, I think so. So you get some leads.
It's a
And
good
guys, look,
offer.
when it comes to pay, just know that, when it's on social media, there's only one chance. Well, two, I would say two, TikTok, and because TikTok's becoming kind of like a mini YouTube when it comes to being a search engine. So YouTube being number one, TikTok being number two, but everything else is interruption, right? No one's going on Instagram hoping to get like a real estate or mortgage ad, right? No one's going on
Yeah.
Facebook hoping to see that. So just know you're interrupting. That's ripe. That's hoping to be it's a shotgun approach, right? I'm praying or spraying and praying and hoping I'm hitting the right person at the right time based on their needs, right? And maybe they click on it, maybe they don't, or maybe they do it. Then I'm retargeting them with something, which is becoming a little bit more complicated. And then also you can't really target like the way you used to, because of all the different rules with Facebook ads. So you have the special ad category. So ultimately, it's not as easy. So you're going to get a lot of people, and just guys, when you're doing paid advertising, especially on social media, you're going to get a lot of people that are not qualified, that are going to be, just not qualified leads. And you have to be, you have to be okay with that. And you mentioned it earlier, as far as doing over 1,300, units for about 300 million. You know what it took for me to do that? It took me I had to generate over 25,000 leads to
Yeah.
get that. Right now, look, the most conversion percentages run anywhere from 1.2 to 3% on average, right? So just know you're not, you're not crushing it, right? The people that are really, I know some real estate shops that are spending, 50, 80, $100,000, they're converting at about 10%, 11%, right? So just know,
Oh,
but it pencils out for them over time. Um, and look, sometimes some months are better than others, but the one thing that I would say about this, and it kind of goes a little bit off script, but I really want everyone to know this, because one is they think that buying leads, whatever, from Zillow or anything else, and I've worked with lead aggregators, and I can tell you right now, I have had people come from every lending tree, Bankrate, Zillow, wherever you would see like the gold standard of leads are, and they're garbage. They're not, and I don't mean that, just by our nomenclature, they're garbage leads, right? Get it from all over the place. But what you guys got to understand is, because of what happened after the pandemic, when our industry basically did double production 2 years in a row, right?
It's
Meaning that
crazy.
we've done double the production that we normally do. What happens in a given year, and guys, this is when my engineer brain starts clicking, is that you usually have a transition of transactions that are done from one year to another, right? Because there's only so much that the industry is capable of doing when it was
Okay.
built the way that it was built, right? So you're going to only do, let's say, maybe about 1.8, 1.9, $2 trillion in volume as an industry, right? 5.5, 5.7 million transactions, right? Total. But what happens when you do double that 2 years in a row? That means that you've taken 2 years of a normal transition of customers out of the game, right? So, and then you take on inflation, you take on
Yeah.
debt, you take on what people have in their savings for like an average median house, which is about $200,000 more than it was in 2019. And then you take that, and I did the math on this, looking at trying to find what the average person has in their savings, and I'm not taking like gifts into account and whatnot. Average the demographic of people who buy houses, lack of inventory, and all that. And out of the hundreds of millions of people that we have in this country, and you take the demographics, you take the savings, you take their credit score, you take everything into account, that buyer pool is less than 50 million people, right? And so
Out of
which is
300
the
plus.
lowest it's ever been. So
Wow.
it's not the lead aggregator's fault. It's not the marketer's fault. It's
Yeah.
not that. It's just, you got to understand that there is no secret channel full of consumers that are the gold standard, that are just great leads. And everyone's dipping into the same pool, right? And we're 2 years of a deficit because of that. And nobody's selling. Yeah, I mean, look, notwithstanding, yes, people are selling, but you know what I mean, compared to like normal years.
Average, like average year. Yeah.
And
Average year
and so
should be it should start with a five.
yeah,
Last year it started with a three, right? The
yeah,
amount of homes sold. That's a big difference. That's a big
yeah.
difference.
So you just got to take all that to account. And so again, that's why I'm using paid advertising to supplement what I'm doing organically. And look, even with all of that being said, deals are still being done. Business is always done in real estate, regardless of market conditions. It always has, always will be. Just the question is are you going to be the one that's putting in the effort and the work? And marketing is the biggest driver, guys. Like, yes, it's self-serving for me as a marketer, but I'll tell you right now, marketing is the biggest driver of growth for any business, right? And if you ask any business, any conglomerate, any business owner, and there's a reason why the top companies that, in any industry spend a lot on marketing, it's because that's going to be the biggest driver of growth, right? Marketing is sales and sales is marketing, right? So if you want to do these things, you're going to have to put in some more time, put in some extra work. But the point is that, the opportunity is that most of your competition is not going to do anything that I talk about. They're going to continue to do everything that they've normally done for a multitude of reasons. But ultimately, how can I do it organically? And then how can I supplement that with paid?
Yeah, 100%. I like that. I think that's the answer, right? Because also speaking from as a practitioner, my main source is organic, and then past clients, referrals, and recommendation, just like a real estate agent from our company Power ISA. But we also do paid ads.
Mhm.
For the exact reasons you just mentioned. If you only have one source of business, market shifts, market conditions change. You're
Yeah.
vulnerable. You're
Yep.
vulnerable to a shift. You're vulnerable to a change. And if your past clients are not spending what they were spending, if those referrals start drying up, what are you going to do, right? So you should
Yep.
absolutely have a complement that source. When we're talking, you mentioned a term that I love to bring up, which is garbage leads. Oh, the leads suck. Oh, the leads are terrible. So
Yep.
so marketer to marketer, when you're looking at these different lead sources, let's grab three major buckets. Let's talk about these three buckets. Referral recommendation, best lead on demand, in my
Yep.
opinion,
Yep.
right? Followed closely by some of these organic leads. If you get an
Mhm.
organic lead, and then you have these paid ads, right? So
Mhm.
in my experience, it's a very different process with each of those. And usually the downfall of a lot of these online marketing campaigns is that the agents assume that it's the same process across all three, and the reality is that it's not, right?
No.
So Jason, how do you prepare people for that? Right? Because if they're doing their database past clients, if they're doing some of these organic strategies, and then they scale up to paid ads, like how, that it's not the same. One of these three is not like the other, right? The Sesame Street say. How do you
Yep.
prepare people for that? Because it's a completely different conversion game. Of course, it's a different marketing game, but it's also a different conversion game. How do you prepare your teams, your clients, people that consult with you? How do they make that leap to be able to convert these leads if they haven't done it in the past?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And to be honest with you, it's tough, right? And some of them you just don't. Like I'll be on conversations. I honestly try to talk people out of doing paid ads, not because I don't think they should, but I really want them to understand what it takes. Because I have a conversation, I'll do a discovery call with someone, and they're like, "Hey, I want to do this, I want to do that." I'm like, "All right, cool." And then I try to scare the crap out of them. To be honest with you, that's how I prepare them. I said, "Are you okay with going 6 months without any type of movement or positive results from spending money? Are you willing to go outcome with no income?" And I said, be honest with me, if because I'll tell you right now, if you're not this, you're going to call me in 30, 60 days and complain and whatever, and you're not going to be in it for the long game, right? And I had so many people that are swore up and down, yeah, I could do all that stuff, and then here we are, 60, right on freaking schedule, 60 days, like, oh look, I know what we talked about, but I think some of the hey, some of these people won't call me back. Right. And I'm like, hey, fantastic. Guess what? They don't want to talk to you. Right. Like, look, I fill out forms all the time and I don't want to talk to the people. Right. Like I just wanted the information. So it's the same thing with what we're doing here. Now, with some of my, and again, that's not really me because I've removed myself from the paid ad. I consult and I advise mostly on messaging, ad creative, that type of stuff. I do
Yeah,
not get into ads manager to run. I don't do that anymore. I took
got it.
myself out of that game because I don't like it. Um, and ultimately, most people aren't ready to do lead generation. So I try to shock their mindset a little bit and understand, like, look, this isn't a referral. This is a warm. They don't know who you are. So let me tell you like that. Have you ever been frustrated when you're talking to someone and you're trying to explain it and they're just not listening to you, no matter what you say, like no matter how you say it, they're just like, not, no, no, they don't listen to you, right? Is that frustrating to you? Yeah, like, yeah, that is lead generation, right? Like they don't trust you. They don't
Yeah,
like you. They don't know you. They don't care about you. They don't care that you send an email about your why that they don't care about. They don't care that you're in it for helping families. They don't care about any of that stuff, right? They care about their own self-interest. Consumers care about themselves morning, noon, and after supper. That's all that matters. And you're sitting there trying to be like, hey, it's a warm and fuzzy, and they don't care, right? They just don't. So you have to, one, just understand that like you don't matter to them, right? How are you going to help them and solve their problems? So your messaging has to change. And you're going to have to do a lot of it. You're going to have to do like I have a 24-month email sequence. Why do I have a 24-month email sequence? Because when I was doing consumer direct, sometimes those leads took a year and a half to almost 2 years
yeah,
to get anywhere, right? And
100%.
then also understand that it's a series of micro conversions, right? Meaning my first conversion is that they actually stopped and looked at the ad. My second micro conversion is that they clicked into it. My third micro conversion is that they clicked into the button to give me their information. My fourth micro conversion, you know what I mean? So I said, so guys, like you got to understand it's step after step. And each one of those is a science to get them to do that, then to follow to do another one. They just don't, hey, well, they filled out the form, right? A lot, guys. Have you ever dealt with a consumer? And I think it's easier conversation. I usually ask, have you ever worked retail before, like in a storefront with consumers? Have you ever done that job before? Because if so, then you're going to probably be a little bit better for lead generation because you're going to understand that consumers by and large will just do dumb things and say dumb things and not act great all the time. And so
Yeah,
and so, you have to be okay with them not calling back. You have to be okay with opting out immediately out of your text message. You have to be, unsubscribing for your email, right? Now, ultimately, you just got to understand is like, how, and you got to adjust your messages, and not every person is going to be the same. So it's how you talk to them, because like I've seen some crazy ads and a response, and the worst is on the mortgage side, where someone finally does raise their hand and respond after like a 2 weeks of just them, just an email here, this and that, and then what do? They send them their freaking online application. It's like, guys, like you're putting them in an instant buying, why are they opting out? Oh, this lead suck. Then it's the lead's fault. It's not. It's you suck, right? Like what you're doing is not great. And it doesn't help them. And that's what I'm saying. You guys are spending money. It does not help me to make you feel good about you failing. Right now, it helps me it would help you feel good as saying like you're not in the same, like, good. Everyone fails. Guess what, guys? 25,000 leads, right? 1,300. What does that mean? Right? That means that I failed tens of thousands of times before I got success, right? Like that's just part of it. So I'll make you feel good that you're not in the same boat, but I'm not going to make, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear so you can be successful. You got to decide, like, am I in it for the long game? Am I going to be successful? So that's why I try to focus on the mindset and just being real with them. And it's a conversation. And sometimes they don't, most of the time they don't get it. They don't believe it. They don't think it. Or if they happen to, this is the worst. If you happen to do lead generation, what I would say in like the golden ages of doing like social media advertising, when it was freaking super easy, and then you got out of it because, hey, I built a good book of business and rates, because some people have only known good times, and when rates have been
Yeah,
low,
it's been a while. It's been a while.
inventory, right? Like you've only known good times. Now you're getting into the dog days of this industry, which could be a 5 or 10 year cycle, by the way. Then they actually have to work for it. And they're like, well, hey, well, when I was running ads in 2017, I'm like, you know what? Then take a time machine, because that ain't that isn't what is going on right
It's
now.
not now.
And you're
It's
going to
not now.
waste money. So it's like, they're going to, they're going to do it one way or another. So but ultimately it's having a plan. It's like, I'm telling them that, but look, guys, I have a plan. If you're still in, it's going to take time. And look, I've had people that got into it and they have got someone, they have closed a loan within 30 days. It happens. And they'll hear that from someone and they believe, oh my God, it's going to happen all the time. It's
That's
not.
the
It's like playing
formula.
golf. You do one hole, and you're putting for birdie, right? That one hole. But then the other 17, you suck, right? Like, and so like, it's the same thing with lead generation, but it's having a plan, messaging. We're going to go through it. You're going to optimize. You're going to do it, but that's a lot of work too. And ultimately, most people don't have the patience to do it because they don't understand it, and so therefore they get frustrated with it. So hire someone to do it. If you don't have it, if you're not in for the long game, you don't have it. And guys, look, d- d- there are exceptions to this rule. Some people are really good at this. But you got to understand it's just a lot of work. If it was easy, then every single one of you would be doing paid lead advertising, converting what you needed to convert, and everyone would be
Easily.
happy. That isn't the
Yeah.
case, and that isn't the case for a reason, right? It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And having a plan, kind of preparing for it. Again, it's not a guarantee, like you said.
No.
Some of those people, they think they feel some way, but when you get punched in the mouth, the plan can suddenly change. Jason, it's been interesting times this last 18 months, last 24 months,
Yep.
for the mortgage side, quite frankly, right?
Oh yeah.
Because like you said, we were in the ZERP era. 2% interest rates were a thing for a while, the post-pandemic market,
Yep.
flurry. What have you been telling mortgage, loan officers, mortgage folks to do to adapt to a world where we're in the, mortgage rate starts with a six, which, also give people perspective, is the like 30-year average of mortgage rates in the US, just to give people a
Yep.
little bit of background on that. Because you're right. I was in a training, I was in a conference, this was about 12 months ago. And the trainer asked, "Hey, who has been here? Who has been in the industry since 2020? Because I've been licensed since 2010. Who's
Mhm.
got into the business in 2020?" And I think three-quarters of the room got up,
Yep.
saying, "Hey, they started since 2020 to now." And I go, "Wow, I forget this is, it's always a very, up and coming industry. There's a lot of new people here all the time because it's so hard, right? A lot of new
Mhm.
people always coming in. But for the last 18, 24 months, what have you been telling loan officers to transition into a world where mortgage interest rates are at 6%, 7%? They touched 8% at the end of last year.
Yep.
What has changed? If it, maybe nothing's changed, but what have you been telling them to kind of, hang on for dear life, survive, and maybe even thrive in a market like this?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I tell them is not to, and guys, just so you know, and I think you guys maybe figured that out in the very beginning. But like I said, I'm born in this industry. I'm passionate about it, right? So everything that I say is because I truly believe the consumer is best served by working with a local real estate and a local mortgage professional, right? I truly believe that that is where the consumer is best served. So don't take anything that I'm saying and you're like, hey, I feel attacked with what he's saying. Like I get it, and but ultimately it's
Triggered.
coming from a
I'm
place of I want you to
triggered.
win. I want
Yeah.
yeah, you're triggered. I want you to win. But when I talk to loan officers, I said, look, and I'm not going to be like going back to, hey, I remember when rates were like 13%. And yes, they were 17%,
Yeah,
18%.
how many people love that, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh,
right.
yeah, back in the 70s and the 80s, it was 18%. Oh, yeah, grandpa, but what about
Yeah,
now, right? Yeah.
yeah. What about now? But so like I said, it's different. So ultimately, it comes down to this: is like, look, here's the facts, and I already said it. Business is always done, and business will continue to be done. It's just, are you going to put in the work? Because you mentioned like everyone since you've only known good times, right? So one is you're going to have to put in more work, work harder than what you have to than what you've normally done for less money. Essentially, that's what I'm talking about. But if you do that, you will start to build up momentum because the opportunity is that 90% of your competition is not going to do any of this stuff, right? 90% of your competition is not going to do anything different. And we saw that half, yeah, I think it was maybe a little bit less, but when it comes to like people that were licensed from 2020 to now, it's about 50% didn't renew their licenses, right? So like that's a big calling. We've had mortgage lenders go out of business, have to,
Yeah.
merge, acquisition. Now these are things that I've been talking about for years that were going to happen because I saw the writing on the wall as far as I didn't see the pandemic, so don't worry, I'm not trying to claim that like, hey, I saw all this stuff happening, but I saw that, hey, margins were going to continue to be compressed, and the industry wasn't changing what they're doing, and eventually some people were going to fail because of it. And here, when something happens that they couldn't absorb, and a pandemic was one of them, and that's and I was more talking about disruption in market conditions, but the pandemic just kind of, after the pandemic and what we had with the inflation and everything, is they couldn't adjust. And so I've been coaching loan officers to, to one, not freak out, understand like the opportunity is still there. People are still going to buy and sell, but you have to change. You have to focus from what you did as a professional when rates were in the twos and threes and stuff, and you played lowest rates in history, historic low rates. What you've done, what you did, it's their own fault. And I tell them that. I said, look, the reason why you're having so many troubles right now has nothing to do with anyone else other than you. You created for 2 years straight, you created a let's make a deal, right? You created that narrative to the consumer. Let's make a deal, historic lows, low, 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 lows. So now you're getting upset when they don't want to do anything because the rates are high. All you did was talk about low rates. And then when rates go down, all you do is talk about low rates. Now's a great time. Well, last week you said was a great time. And you said that the week before. Now it's a great time. So when is it a great time? And so I had them
Yeah.
focus on, and it's going to sound totally cliche, but I had them focused on, like educating in a way of how do I create conversations? And so instead of saying now's a great time to buy, instead, this is the message you put out. If you plan on buying a house in the next 6, 12, or 24 months, let's talk so I could create you a successful plan for when you
Yeah.
decide to go to deal with the current market conditions. Stop trying to get people when you could just throw a rock and hit someone that was ready to refi or purchase. Now you have to create as many conversations as possible. So I said, you need to put out there, need to get their contact information, fill your database, because that is the key, right? The people. And look, I don't want to say we're coming out of it. I think we are to a certain extent, not about rates or anything, but ultimately what happens, and again, going back to behavioral economics, when the consumers perceive a normalized market, meaning they have accepted that these are what the house prices are, the market's not going to crash, rates are generally going to be where they're at, and this is what I'm looking at. Consumers are always a consumer regardless of product, meaning there's a lot of people that have wanted to sell and wanted to buy, but they were just waiting, just hoping there was going to be something or other that was going to be, let's make a deal mode, right? Now that they've accepted, and you look at all the studies and everything else has proven that, where it used to be like 85 or 90% of people holding fast, now it's in the 50s and 60s because they've accepted a normalized market,
Yeah.
right? And here's the thing, the people with the largest database, with the highest amount of trust, are going to win. So if you've been doing that the last 2 years, you're definitely going to win. Your business is going to be a great position. If you start doing that now, because look, that never goes out of style, but start doing that now. Start creating so you could get people to have conversations with you. Who cares if they buy now? Do you care if they buy now or buy later? Would it be nice if you started this 6 months ago, and then let's say next month you had 15 people that were ready to go because you started 6 months ago? How much of a transformation would that be for your business? Right. But we don't think in terms like that. We think about like, what can I do
Correct.
today to get deals in the door? Because you waited too long. Now your back's up against the wall. You're going to make bad decisions and you need things done now. Right. I'm telling you, don't get into that predicament. So if you have runway now, start filling your database, start having conversations, guides, lead magnets. Let me create a successful plan to you. Let me tell you how to navigate the market so that when you're ready, I'm ready. Right. So whether that's 6, 12 months or no. And here's the thing, you just didn't want to have the conversation. Right now, no one's having conversations. They're trying to get them instantly to commit to doing
Yeah.
a buying decision.
Bottom of funnel. That's what we
Bottom of
want, right?
funnel, right? Going right to the bottom. But if you create conversations, guess how many times have you talked to someone that was apprehensive, dragging their feet, sitting on the fence, but you had a conversation with them, and after that, they're like, you know what? I didn't even know that. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that. How many times has that happened? I will venture quite a bit. I know the loan officers that I coach quite a bit when they've done that. And they said, yeah, I was having this guy. He was thinking like he was going to do it in 12 months. He decided to, we had a conversation, and guess what? He's under contract. Right. And I'm all, but in
There
your
you
mindset, if you would have just went
go.
bottom of funnel, you never would have got this guy. You never would have had the
Correct.
conversation and you
Correct.
wouldn't have this loan. Now go back the last 12 months. How many times do you think you missed out because you didn't do that? Right. And it's like,
100%.
let's say it was 5 times, right? Would 5 extra loans in your pipeline, would that have helped in the last, 12 months? Absolutely. Right. So again, these are the things that you have to think about to have conversations, because if you do, you're going to have a big database of people that are engaged because you didn't try to sell them anything. And guess what? Nobody else is doing that. Everyone's leaving them alone. They're just trying to buy, buy, buy. So all they're doing is just pushing them closer to you because you're not doing that, because you interrupted the pattern, and you're going to be better for it. So that's what I've been coaching loan officers about, is to have conversations, to create trust, create brand recognition. And I equated it to this, right? I know it's kind of a long answer, but this is the way that I wanted everyone to think about it. So we're in a big storm, right? And so people that fish, and I use this, I'm not a fisher, but or fisherman or whatever, but like, um, but I understand like the best times to go fishing. Or if you think about like Forrest Gump, right? What did they do?
Yeah.
Like they went out in
Oh
the
yeah.
storm. They went out in the
100%.
storm, and then they were the last shrimp boat standing, right? And so,
Yep.
like, right now
100%.
you could go out on like the best fishing spot, the best pier, because the storm's in, everyone's at home waiting for weather to get better. You have the greatest fishing spot and pier, and you have no competition. But all of a sudden, when condition gets better, then what are you going to do? You're going to look around and, oh my God, I got
Correct.
10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people I'm competing with now, right? It's because we're a reactive industry, not a
Yep.
proactive industry. And so that's what I want people to think about, is that, look, now's the time to do it. I mean, honestly, 6 and 12 months ago was the time to be doing it, but do it now. Do it today. Go out and start creating conversations today, because guess what? This year is going to be the same, or maybe even a little worse than it was last year. The only thing we have somewhat in our favor is that there's probably going to be some things done by the government because it's an election year and they got to look like they're doing something right. So like that's going to, so there's going to be something to that probably, but either way, it's not going to be, we're not looking at 4%, 3% or anything else. Is that you have to do what the others can't, and either they can't and won't, but be the ones that can and will.
100%. And last question before we finish it up, Jason.
Yeah.
Same question, but instead of the interest rate, period coming in and changing, the NAR settlement. You told me before the call you're having an event.
Yep.
You're talking about this, this week. Give us a little bit of teaser. What if anything should loan officers, should agents do differently once these rules come into effect? In fact, you know what? We don't have to wait for the rules to come into effect. The genie's out of the bottle. The mainstream media is running with this.
Yep.
You might not like their narrative, but they're running with it, right? They're trying to educate the consumer, in my opinion, the wrong way, but the information's out there. So a lot of agents saying, "Oh, it's a proposed settlement. It's not even final. It's not until July." No, you got to be ready now, because people
Yep.
are going to have questions now, not in July. So what are you telling your loan officers? What are you telling agents to prepare for this new post NAR settlement world?
Yeah, it's definitely been the talk since it happened. And so like we're doing a webinar tomorrow with a good friend of mine. She's a real estate expert, coach, speaker, and Katie Clancy. She's at some of you in this group may know her, but so I'm doing a webinar with her. That's we're just calling it fact and fiction because there's a lot of bad information out there. A lot of people are freaking out. A lot of people are saying this is nothing. A lot of people saying this is everything, and people don't really know where to get their information from. Now we don't, and a lot of people that are saying stuff, I think they mean well, but sometimes there's an agenda behind it, and also
For
there's a
sure.
little bit of ego because ultimately, as an agent in an industry, real estate industry, you feel like you're being attacked, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens when you're attacked? What's the natural response is to defend yourself. Right. And right now, I'll tell you right now, the industry at large, including NAR and a lot of the leadership in the real estate industry has not done the agents any favors with the response. And quite honestly, agents have not done the perception any favors with their response. I have seen agent after agent argue with consumers in face and like on articles in the comments from like
Wow.
CNN and Fox and everything else. And ultimately, your
Taking
goal
the
should be,
bait, basically.
yeah, they're
Taking the
taking the
bait.
bait, and I get it. Like I said, you're being attacked right now, but ultimately you got to educate, not defend, right? You don't defend yourself because ultimately the consumer does not care. The consumer does not care that you work for free. The consumer does not care all the shared expenses between your brokerage and all the things that you come out of pocket for and all the things that you do. And guys, like I'm just being real. Again, what did I say in the beginning? I've used an agent every single time I've bought and sold. I will continue to do that because I believe it's best for me because you guys do a lot of shit that I don't want to deal with, right? And so I'm happy to pay the price so that I don't have to do it. Plus, there's a lot of things that agents do to protect consumers from stress, right? There's a lot of things that agents do that they don't talk about. So if I'm an agent, I'm telling you one, don't attack, don't defend, educate, right? Don't share how hard, because guess what, guys, as an agent, I'm gonna just be real with you. No one put a gun to your head to tell you to be an agent. You chose to do that. You chose it because it's risk reward, right? You risk working for you risk maybe not getting paid as much because when you do your job right, you get a crap load of money on the other end, right? And you could make a lot of money just for one transaction, right? So ultimately, when it comes down to it, is the consumer doesn't care about that, but tell stories about how you solve problems and change lives, right? Talk
100%.
about how you solve problems and change lives, and don't talk about the mechanical functions, right? I see these people putting out these laundry list of things that they do. Guess what?
Oh, I've seen
If I
those posts.
as
Oh
a
my
consumer,
goodness.
I'm looking at like, oh, well, that's a minimum wage type job. That's a minimum wage type job. You know what I mean? Like, so like you're not, and again,
100%.
guys, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's what the perception. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And so we're doing the webinar so we could do fact from fiction because there's a lot of crap and the mainstream media is we all know, right? It's all horrible headlines. And the consumers aren't reading the articles, by the way. They're just reading the headlines.
100%
Um,
not.
but I've
People are mad about housing prices. People are not happy about inflation, and you feed them a headline like that, and they're just going to eat it up. They're just going
yeah,
to eat it up, and engaging and inserting yourself into that conversation. I agree with you, Jason. Is not a winning proposition. You're not going to win
no, you're not going to win, and ultimately the consumer doesn't, because consumer is going to compare what they make to what you make, right?
there.
And
100%.
ultimately you
It's
could you
normal.
could get you could give the average of like, well, an average real estate across all the industry only does like 40,000 or whatever that is. The consumer
Yeah,
is going to look like, well, the consumer is going to look at, I sold my house for $500,000 and you made 15,000. That's what they're going to look at, right? They're not going to look at the
100%.
splits or any of that stuff. It's just about headlines. So ultimately, what it comes down to is as a real estate agent, one is things are going to change because regardless of, and again, and you're absolutely right, it's a proposed settlement. No one's agreed to anything yet. That doesn't happen until May 9th, right? However, what I would say is usually these things don't come out unless there's been somewhat of a
Oh yeah,
green light or some sort of a
hundred
of like,
percent.
hey, this is okay on it.
Handshake deal,
Yeah,
emails exchanged, right?
exactly. And
Yeah,
it may not, but ultimately, um I don't think NAR really did any favors on that. But guess, and look, they weren't in the best place either, so it's not, and I'm not here to defend or anything. I'm just saying I get why people are not happy with it. Also understand that, guys, like in the state of Washington, this has been going on for over a year, and all of this
yeah,
stuff has already been in place in Washington, right? So like that, so you know what I mean? So it's already happened in certain areas. And I've talked to agents where there has been 0% buyer commission offered right? At the beginning of the transaction. However, they did get paid commission because guess what? Even with all of this, the only real change, and this is what's kind of crazy to me, is the only change really. I mean, there's other changes, but when we talk about buyer agents getting commission, it's just because it's, and are you saying just because of the one change that it's not put on the MLS, but you could get it the same way? Everything works
100%.
exactly the same way, that all of a
Yeah,
sudden, like the whole world is going to come tumbling down. And I get the reasons of transparency and stuff, and I get valid reasons for that. But that just shows how weak the system was, if just by taking it out of the centralized database, that it was going to cause this. Because all of a sudden, what are listing agents going to screw you out of commission? And not because, as a listing agent, I want my highest and best. I don't do that by reducing the buyer pool, right?
yeah,
And look, yes, with the internet, that's, decreased a little bit. But again, that's why we can't go into mechanical list of things that you do. We got to go about how you solve problems and change lives. All the things that they don't see, that doesn't have to do with taking pictures or opening doors, right? Or putting out signs or marketing and things of that nature. You're going to have to be a little bit more real, right? You're going to have to be a little bit more accepting of the perception. But at the same time, that this is the time for you to show your value, right? This is the time to
100%.
do it. And that's why we're having the webinar, because we're going to talk about, like, hey, this is what's going on. Give you a
Yeah.
no opinion, no agenda. This isn't a marketing funnel for anything. It's just for us, two people that are, respective leaders in their industries, to come together to talk about this, to get questions from the people, to say, like, how do you move forward? And as an agent, how you move forward is you better have your value prop on lockdown. You better have exactly what you provide as a buyer's agent. And it can't start off with a laundry list of things that you do. It has to start off with, like, I'm not going to find you a house, right? Because guess what? Zillow could find a house, right? Anyone could find a house. That's not your value. Your value is you're going to help the consumer get the house and keep the house, right? That's what you're helping and do, right? For the whole transaction, for the landmines and all the things that could possibly derail the transaction. Could you use real estate lawyers? Sure, right? For the contract and that type of stuff. I can't use them to negotiate, right? I can't use them to help me navigate the landmines of what conveys, what doesn't convey. Like, I want furniture. I don't want all the repairs, negotiate. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there. Right. So again, you have to talk about how you solve problems and save lives. I have a lot of stories myself, but you guys have to tell those stories too. Right. But also just remember, show some grace. Right. I think it was the CEO of Real said that. He's like, hey, I think it's time for everyone to show some grace. Stop attacking each other. Don't attack loan officers about their commission. Because, guys, you don't want that. And here's what I want to leave this, because I want to support all the agents right now. Be careful what you wish for. Saying, oh, well, underwriting standards are going to have to change. Lenders are going to have to change so you could finance it into it. First of all, I'm going to tell you right now, no voter or anyone is going to care about protecting what you get paid, right? Nobody is going to do that. And ultimately, here's what's going to happen. Be careful what you wish for. I'm in the mortgage industry. We have regulated compensation, right? So this is what you happen. Okay, guess what? We do roll it. Let's say it gets rolled into the financing, gets rolled into the loan product. Guess what happens then? Guess what the government's going to say? Okay, great. You're going to be capped at, if it's a house that's sold from 100,000 to 400,000, the max you're going to be able to make is $3,800, right? If it's 400 to 700,000, the max you're going to be able to make is $9,000, right? So forget the 3% or 2% or anything else. They'll roll it into the loan amount. But guess what? It's now going to be capped. It's going to be capped or tiered. I could guarantee that's what's going to happen if they decide to roll it into the loan amount. Because what they're going to are you all of a sudden is buyer agent going to be the only thing that's immune from being capped or tiered from the federal government? You're absolutely out of your mind, right? And it will. So
Interesting.
mark it here. If that happens, just know that's what's coming. And then
Got it.
let's say it is, but if I'm already paying a high price and I'm able to finance it as a borrower, am I really going to have to finance an extra 15 because it's going to hurt with my qualification, right? And guys, I'm not blind to it. I think this really does hurt first time home buyers, underserved, so I think there's a lot of bad to this as well. But
Yeah.
ultimately, if I'm a borrower, I don't want to finance an extra $15,000 if I'm looking at 3% on the buy side of a $500,000 house. I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to a flat fee shop to represent me. I'm going to go to a 1%, 1.5% broker to do that. Most listing agents would be like, hey, this is what you're going to have to do. Hey, just put 1.5, or 1%, 1.5. The people that are charging the flat free models or come up with the new models, because this will birth new buyer agent models, they're going to have a windfall, right? And so this is why you have to get in front of it now about value. And look, I think things are going to change. I think at some point it's probably going to be, and look, guys, let's just be honest. You can't call them discounters. If you're going to tell me it's not a set standard for compensation, then you can't call them discounters, because a discount is
Sure.
based off of having a standard compensation,
100%.
right? So like, so
Yeah.
just be careful what you guys are saying out there right now, because it kind of goes
Yeah.
anti to what that is. And again, remember, I'm here for you. I believe in your value. That's why I've paid. I'm in the industry. Could I have done this stuff myself without the use of an agent? 100%. Did I use an agent? Yes. Right. So like the point is that I
100%.
believe in your value, but you got to make everyone else believe in your value. And
You got to make
unfortunately,
that case.
yeah. And unfortunately, you have over a 500 million reasons why people don't perceive you as having value. And that's what you have to accept. You may not
Yeah.
like it, but you have to accept. You have to accept it. And then that's what we're going to talk about in the webinar, is where to go from here.
I love it. Jason, send me a link to that. I'd love to publish it below
Yeah,
here in the group
absolutely.
so people can jump on that if they want to. One last thing I do want to say is that I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to turn into a value conversation. But one thing I am seeing is that the passion and or passion or vitriol, whatever you want to call it, that you see on this discussion online, in the forums and the groups, that is one perception of the reaction and the conflict that can happen with this conversation. When you talk to agents and probably even loan officers that are talking to buyers and sellers on the ground that are hearing this news, I'm seeing a completely different conversation, a completely different, at least so far, completely different conversation, because the consumer, when you put a headline saying, hey, do you want commissions to be lower? Yeah, I want commissions to be lower. When they're sitting face to face with the real estate agent, the realtor, the person they've hired and they want to work with and they have connection with, the answer is different. Okay.
Yep.
The answer is different. The response changes. So
Mm-hmm.
I encourage the agents out there, have these conversations with the buyers, the sellers. Don't waste the energy online fighting with people. Like Jason's saying, educate, right? When you're face to face, educate. When you're online, educate.
Mm-hmm.
And come from grace, right?
Yes.
100%. Be a
Yes.
pro. Be a
Yeah.
professional.
Be a
Okay. Because
professional. 100%. Yeah.
everyone can complain about how much my dentist charges, my lawyer, my whatever, my accountant, my CPA. But when we flip that and turn into a value conversation, I think we come out on top every single time. And
Yep.
when people are having these conversations face to face, it's completely different than it is online. Don't
Yep.
think that that's the reality. Don't get
Yeah, that's just the
confused.
people making the noise, right?
A
So yeah.
hundred percent, a
Yeah.
hundred percent. Because when you talk to people that are actually having conversations with buyers and sellers, it is a non-issue. From what I'm seeing in the comments that I've seen, and I was licensed in Washington State for 13 years, so I know Washington State inside and out. And in Washington State, because you've been able to pay buyer agents zero for it was
Mm-hmm.
13, 15 months now, right?
Yep.
In Washington State, what happened on the ground? Minimal change. Okay. I don't, of course, there's no standard commission. I'm not going to get into that, but minimal change from the status quo. How about that? Minimal. Lennar Homes, I'm going to call you guys out. Lennar Homes did offer 0% in Washington State, and they stopped doing that. I'll
Yep.
just leave it at that, right? That was, they were making less money by offering 0%.
Yep. Yep.
Period in the story. So
Yep.
they're no longer doing that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll leave it at that. When you look at the actual information on the ground, talking to actual consumers on the ground, in my experience, it is nothing like this toxicity we can see online.
Yes.
So seek out those conversations. I think
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna have a very different result. So Jason, this has been awesome, man. We went way over time, but it's been a lot of fun. I love talking to people that are passionate about the industry, that advocate for the industry. So it's been a joy having you in here. Send me that link. I'll be happy to send some folks over to that webinar tomorrow. And appreciate you. You have an open invitation anytime you want to talk about the next topic, the next big thing. Would love to have you back in here.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. I hope that I added value. Yes, we definitely went over time. So sorry about that. But look,
No
at the end of the
worries.
day, I'll
It's
send you
good.
guys,
It's
I'll send
good.
you the link. Yeah. But yeah, I'll send you the link, post it. It happens tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. So would love to have anyone just join us and ask questions or just listen and learn.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Jason. Thanks, everyone. See you on the next one.
All right. Thank you.